In the ancient legal code of Deuteronomy, there's this one chapter that gets right into the heart of life and death in ways that are, frankly, both fascinating and pretty shocking. It lays out these super specific rules for everything from unsolved murders to rebellious kids. So let's dive in and unpack what these ancient laws can tell us about justice and society back then.
All right, let's start with a scenario. I want you to imagine you're living thousands of years ago. There's no CSI, no DNA evidence, nothing like that. A body is found out in a field, and the killer is just gone. Does the community just shrug and move on? Well, according to this ancient text, the answer is a big, emphatic no.
So this first law we're going to dig into isn't really about finding the killer. It's not about playing detective. It's actually about something much bigger. How the entire community deals with the guilt of an unsolved crime and, restores balance.
Okay, so when a body was discovered out in the middle of nowhere, it created way more than just a mystery. To them, it was a kind of spiritual pollution. The idea was that innocent blood had been shed on the land, and that blood was seen as a contamination that if you didn't deal with it, would stain the entire community with guilt.
To deal with this, the law required this incredibly detailed atonement ritual. First, the elders would actually go out and measure to find the closest town. That town was then held responsible. They'd have to pick a perfect young heifer, one that had never been put to work, take it to an unplowed valley with a running stream, and break its neck. It was a really powerful symbolic act, meant to sort of transfer the violence of the murder onto the animal in this very controlled, ritualistic way.
And this, right here, was the heart of the whole thing. As the town elders washed their hands over the slain heifer, they would make this public declaration. Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. This just goes to show you the whole process wasn't about forensics. It was a public ceremony designed to cleanse the community from the guilt of this murder and get everything back in order, both socially and spiritually.
All right, so this idea of the whole community being on the hook continues with the next law. But here, the focus shifts. The threat to social order isn't some unknown killer from the outside. It's a disruptive force coming from right inside the family.
Now, this law is, undeniably harsh to our modern ears. If parents had a son who they decided was stubborn and rebellious, a glutton and a drunkard who just would not listen to them, they could bring him before the town elders, and the sentence, which was carried out by all the men of the town, was death by stoning.
And the text is super clear about why they would do something so extreme. A son who completely rejected his parents' authority wasn't just a family problem, he was seen as a source of social rot, an evil that had to be purged to protect the whole community. The public nature of the execution was meant to be a powerful warning to everyone. It reinforced the absolute importance of social order.
Okay, so now we're going to shift from the public square right into the private home. But as you're about to see, the law was just as concerned with regulating power and establishing order inside the family as it was outside of it.
Let's talk about the context of war. If a soldier took a female captive and wanted to marry her, he couldn't just do whatever he wanted. The law actually demanded a full month of transition. She had to shave her head and trim her nails, which were seen as acts of purification, and really importantly, she was given time to mourn for her family and her old life. Only after that month could the marriage actually happen. It forced a pause, really a moment of humanity in what was a brutal situation.
And get this. Here's where we find some really surprising protections built right into the law. Even though she came into the home as a captive of war, she could never be sold like property. And if her husband later decided he didn't want to be married to her anymore, he couldn't sell her or treat her like a slave. He had to let her go free. It basically established a legal safety net, preventing her from being treated purely as an object.
Next up, a law that tackles a classic source of family drama, favoritism. Picture this: a man has two wives. If his firstborn son is with the wife he doesn't love as much, he was forbidden from giving that son special inheritance, the double portion, to the son of the wife he actually favored. The law basically said, nope, your personal feelings don't get to break the rules. The right of the firstborn was an objective legal fact.
So we've looked at an unsolved murder, a rebellious son, a captive wife, and a family inheritance dispute. At first glance, they might seem totally unrelated. But when you take a step back, a really clear picture starts to emerge about what this ancient society valued most.
One of the huge themes tying these laws together is this idea of collective responsibility. The entire community had to atone for that unsolved murder, and the entire community had to carry out the sentence on the rebellious son. This tells us the crime wasn't just seen as an individual's mistake. It was something that affected the health of the whole society, and everyone was on the hook to restore the balance.
And it's the same thing inside the home, just on a smaller scale. These laws were there to put limits on the absolute power of the head of the household. He couldn't just treat a captive wife like a slave, and he couldn't let his personal feelings mess with the established inheritance rights of his firstborn. The law stepped in to create structure and protect those who were in weaker positions.
So in the end, this chapter really makes you think about the whole point of law. Is it just about punishing individuals who do wrong, or is it also about holding together the very fabric of a community, regulating power and giving a voice to the vulnerable? These ancient rules, as strange and foreign as they might seem to us, they raise these huge questions about justice and order that, honestly, we're still grappling with today.